Welcome to the Winter 2016 edition of Wraparound South. I'm Laura Valeri, and I'm sitting here today with MK Asante, best-selling writer, award-winning filmmaker, Renaissance man, hip-hop artist. There's nothing he hasn't done. And he is here, Georgia Southern, to read and give a performance based on his book, Buck, Coming of Age in Philadelphia. This is a story of Asante as a precocious boy growing up during a difficult time in his family's life and surviving poverty and gang violence on the streets of Philadelphia through the power of writing. Maya Angelou commented the memoir, calling it a story of surviving and thriving with passion, compassion, wit, and style. So let's talk about Buck first. Buck, Coming of Age in Killadelphia, I said it. And how would you summarize it for people who haven't read it yet?
Well, thank you. It's great to be here on campus. Buck is the graceful survival against impossible circumstances. That's what it's about. It's about my journey. It's about my miseducation, my re-education, my street education, my self-education, and me finally realizing the difference between school and education.
That's great.
Yeah.
At the end of your memoir, you have a scene where you're writing the first pages of Buck in high school, but you actually didn't write the book until around 2012, 2013.
Yeah.
And you had written 2 books of poetry and another nonfiction book, It's Bigger Than Hip Hop.
Yeah.
So what made you decide to go back to your youth and write about that?
It was the most difficult thing. I feel like, as storytellers, there's always this story in our head, right? That we have that pretty much haunts us. We're scared of it. We don't want to touch it. And that's what we need to write. And Buck was that for me. It was the thing that scared me the most. So as a writer, as an artist, I've learned to run toward fear.
Right. There are many complex thematic webs in Buck. You talk about racial and socio-economical issues. You touch upon mental illness. You touch upon our system of education, like you just said. How did you manage to make this book come together? It feels so seamless as you juggle all these different aspects of being.
Yeah, well, it's interesting. I feel like part of it is it's already in us, in our experience. We all experience all of those things in our lives and our journeys, and so it's really about, okay, how can I weave those things together in a way that is organic, to who we are, to who I naturally am. And so a lot of late nights and yerba mates and frustration, and struggle, I think Nathaniel Hawthorne has one of my favorite quotes about writing. He says, the easy read is a damn hard write.
That's right on. And that's exactly what Buck feels like. That's great. That's great.
So there's a lot of struggle that goes on behind the scenes when you read something that's easy and seamless and flowing. You got to know that the writer struggled.
One part that I really liked about the book was your voice is really distinctive and very lyrical. It has a lot of rhythm. And then there's, right about 1/3 into it, you switch voices and you go into your mother's voice through her journal. Now, I know that you got in trouble because you said that in the memoir for using her journal. I just wanted you to talk about your idea for, having the switch of voices and how you managed the flow of the narrative.
Well, I think my mom saved me, actually. And she added a real interesting, complex layer to the book that gave it a lot of depth and substance. And it also, like you said, lyrically, tonally, it represents a shift, and especially I think that's part of Buck's what keeps Buck relevant for a wide range of readers, because you have Milo's 13, 14, 15-year-old voice, and he's talking in slang and he's interpreting everything, and it's fast and it's hip hop and it's all that going on, and it's in real time. And then you have but there's not much, because I wrote the story in first person present tense. There's not much room for like reflection and introspection for Milo's character. He's mainly just living and experiencing and kind of seeing things and realizing things. When my mom's voice comes in through her diaries, it gives us, first of all, a chance to kind of just shift tones and voice and calm down a little bit, you know. Milo is going like this and this, and you know, and my mom is much more composed, but also the weight of what she's saying is heavier in a lot of ways because it's infused with this sense of time and reflection and experience and depression and sadness, and it's almost like she knows what's going to happen or what's happening or what will happen, you know. She's got this hindsight. So yeah, so I really loved that. And then I loved how my brother came in. My brother's prison letters, there's two of them that are in the book that also represent a shift, and also just it really helps us understand how my brother kind of grew up in jail, you know, and how he changed. And then you even have my one letter from my sister also in the book, who has schizophrenia, and just kind of reading her ideas and her thoughts. And yeah, I really liked including the different voices, but my mom's obviously takes the cake because it's you know, throughout, it's consistent throughout. And it's one thing to hear me kind of talk about going to school and what I think about the school system, but then it's like you hear my mom reflecting on, like, you know, the deep challenges of sending, you know, black boys to Philadelphia public schools and knowing like what the deal is, you know what I'm saying? And so you're you know, it's powerful stuff. Or hearing her talk about suicide and depression and mental health, and you know,
with your sister, there's also something about that from your sister's perspective.
Yeah, so, definitely, right? From someone who's you know, totally in it, who totally believes that, you know, we're related to Marilyn Monroe and all of that, you know. So yeah,
it was. I really loved how you treated that part with a lot of compassion, but also sense of humor.
Yeah,
and it was really truly enjoyable to read both from Uzi and your sister. And I guess I have to ask as a reader, are they okay?
Yeah. I mean, yeah, everybody's good. Everybody's good, you know.
Maya Angelou wrote a truly beautiful commentary on your book. In the end, she says, and I quote, "MK Asante, please continue to live, to accept your liberation, to accept how valuable you are to your country, and admit that you are very necessary to us all." That's just really wonderful. Tell us about how you came in contact with Maya Angelou.
Wow. Well, Auntie Maya, Dr. Maya Angelou, she was one of my mentors, and I met her in 2007, I think was the year. I was in grad school. I'm sorry, not 2007. This was 2005. I was in grad school at UCLA, and I was working on a film called The Black Candle. It wasn't called The Black Candle at the time, but I knew it was a documentary, and it was going to deal with Kwanzaa, and it was going to deal with celebrating the African American experience, something like that. And I reached out to Dr. Angelou. I didn't know her at the time, and she was so warm and receptive. She agreed to look at my proposal. I met with her. She agreed to narrate the movie only if we could write it together. So we co-wrote the movie. She wrote poetry for the movie. She narrated it. It was just an amazing experience. And then after that, we kept in touch. I even did things like, you know, she needed a website. I used to maintain her website for her, and just do little things like that. And you know, she was always correcting me in a good way. Yeah. Like, she would always tell me, you know. And then she was just so, you know, so sharp, you know. Like, she would just read so much, and she would always know. She had like all these poems memorized, and she would just start reciting them, and just really a funny person as well, you know. So she's the reason why if a young person comes up to me and wants some help, then I'm gonna try to help them out. You know, especially if they have it together. You know, yeah.
So actually, you come from a very politically active family, really.
Yeah.
Your father is very well known in the civil rights movement, and Maya Angelou, of course, we all know about that. Yeah. I'm just wondering, do you consider yourself an activist or just an artist, or is there any way to separate the two?
Well, I consider myself, you know, I use this term in my book, It's Bigger Than Hip Hop, called artivist. And an artivist is kind of like someone who uses arts, you know, toward activism, you know. I believe that all art is political. So I believe that whether it's kind of blatantly political, or sometimes when art seems like it's not political, it really, it's just kind of supporting the status quo. So that makes it political. So everything is political. You know, I call myself an artist. I consider myself an artist. And there's a real important reason why. As I got older, and sometimes I hear the word activist thrown around, but that's trouble. That's problematic for me. The reason why is because as someone who knows organizers and activists that's what they do
Right.
on a full-time basis. I would never call myself that. That's not what I'm committing my life. That kind of work is so intense and exhaustive, and is the energy that it takes every day to organize and mobilize people and be on the front lines. So activism to me, and an activist is to me is someone who, kind of like the way I approach art. This is my life. I'm breathing it. I'm living it. I'm doing it every day. So I'm an artist, and what I like to do is, I think art should be substantive. I think it should be conscious. I think it should raise awareness. I think art should lend itself to the spirit of activism, the spirit of the social movements that are going on in the day. But I would never be under the illusion that I'm some kind of activist, because that's not what I'm doing, really. I'm making art, and I'm writing.
For art. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So, and I have so much respect for the brothers and sisters who every day are being activists and organizing and mobilizing and creating. That's a whole different thing. And it. You can't just say, "Oh, I'm an activist." I support the movements, and I'll march, but in terms of the that kind of work, that's really difficult work, and you can't just throw it around. So I like to, when people call me that, I mean, it's flattering, but I don't think it's true.
I know that you're working now on a soundtrack. Well, actually, you finished the soundtrack
Yeah.
for a book, and now you're working on a
Yeah.
film.
Yeah.
And tell us a little bit about what the film and the soundtrack adds to the experience of reading the book.
The soundtrack for me is another way, it's another language to communicate some of the ideas in the book. It's a way to actually get people to the book. There's people who hear the soundtrack and are like, yo, this is dope. And then they're like, someone's like, yo, did you know this is like a book too? And they're like, what? Like, they didn't even know it was a book. They just heard the music, and thought the music was good. So, it's trying to get people to read. It's also, there's this, I heard the music as I was writing Buck. I heard there needs to be music to this. I wanted to also, even just, thinking about how books are released. A book comes out and it's like a hardcover, right? And
Right.
That's kind of like the first release, and then there's the paperback release. I think I wanted one more moment, and the soundtrack was another moment to kind of reflect on the book and push the book. So that worked out well too. And then the soundtrack also, a lot happened between publishing Buck and the soundtrack coming out, and I just wanted to reflect on that and give people another way to experience Buck. You know what I mean? So
Will we get new scenes in the movies, or is there something coming up in there?
definitely, but not new scenes, new interpretation, but but it's the same story, obviously, because it's a memoir. So
But it's never the same, right? When you go from film to
it's true. It's true. It's true. I think film definitely lends itself more to like creative license. You can kind of like go a little bit off.
And Uzi's gonna be in the movie?
Oh, I mean, his character, him specifically, that would be great. I think he couldn't play Uzi because he's much older now. He couldn't play Uzi in the book, but he could definitely, have a cameo as one of the guys. One of the old heads.
I'd love to see that.
Yeah.
All right. What about fiction? That's one genre you haven't touched. Is there a novel in your future?
I think there is. There definitely is. I've got a bunch of ideas. So at some point, that's gonna happen. At some point, that's gonna happen. I've even talked to my editor about one idea, particularly that I have, um, but I'm just so wrapped up in some other things right now that I don't
Yeah.
know when I'm gonna get to it. But it's on. It'll definitely get done.
I guess one last question. You are so creative. You are completely comfortable with music, film, writing, poetry. How do you give that enthusiasm to your students in the classroom or to people who follow you? What is your message to them?
I think part of it is just I give you a perfect example. You know, I had a professor in college named Lee Upton. Do you know Lee Upton, by the way?
No,
Lee
I
Upton. She's a poet,
don't.
and you know, it was a creative writing class, and I think everyone. I'm that guy now. I realize, but everyone has this creative writing professor when they're in college, who's like super enthusiastic about like, and she would just be like, she'd be like, she had this really great accent, and she'd be like, "Oh, your poem, oh," and she'd be so into it, and she'd be like, "The rhythm, the pace," and she would just be like, you're like, where did, like, is she serious? Like, is she really like this? Like, she just was so enthusiastic and energetic about everyone's writing, and you know, and what she brought to the class and the table was contagious, and it was like, it was pure. Like, it was so pure that you had to just like love it. Like, you had to, you know, and she was quirky, but like she just had such a great energy about it, and you know she was passionate about it. And so I think the best way to teach, the best way to kind of, you know, convey that is to just be passionate about it yourself. So for me, you know, I think the way that I convey that to the students is just I'm passionate when I read their stuff and when I read other stuff, and you know, I just bring energy in. So I think they kind of get enthusiastic about it because I am, you know.
Mm-hmm.
So
Do you ever encourage them to go into trials to put some music, or do you ever tell them about possibilities of different expression?
I mean, this is the crazy and cool thing. I've got students coming in that are already doing it. You know, they're showing me their YouTube videos and they're showing me their music video, you know, so they're coming in giving me ideas, giving me inspiration. So it's definitely reciprocal. You know, yeah, I have a lot of students who are, I think the younger generation is definitely more like they're very comfortable doing a bunch of things. You know what I mean? I think we even live in an economy now where you can't just really do one thing. You know what I mean? So I think young people have this notion anyway of, yeah, well, I'm this and I'm that and I do that. You know, and they can kind of, and because we live in such a multitasking environment, they're just, you know, they've always got windows open.
All right.
Even if they're minimized, they're still
Yeah.
open.
Let's tell everybody where they can find your soundtrack, your book, and all that stuff.
Well, they can find everything on mkasante.com. You know, I maintain my website and put a lot of, you know, new interviews and books and music and all that stuff is on there. I'm coming out with a lot of new music. I'm on a new album that comes out November 6th called Indie 500. It's Talib Kweli and Ninth Wonder put out an album together, and I'm on that track called Bangers. I just came out with a new song yesterday, actually, called Rap Psalms with a dude named Narcy out of Florida. He's also a scholar, a writer, but a rapper too. And I've got just a bunch of new stuff coming out. So the Buck film obviously be coming out soon. Yep.
And you'll be reading at Georgia Southern tonight at 7 p.m.
Tonight, Georgia Southern, 7 p.m. You know, Twitter, MK Asante.
Thank you so much for being here. Really appreciate it.
Thank you for bringing me and for having me and for being who you are.